Takes a lot to get these things underway, doesn't it? You know, we're going for a ride in the water. How do you guys feel about that? You know, the duck's going to stay just like that while we're in the water. Nothing changes. The only thing that changes is that we engage a propeller. Right now, as we're driving around Boston, there's two little rudders back there not doing a thing except moving around with the steering wheel. But when we get to the top of the ramp at the river, we engage a propeller, and then we go down into the water, and that's how we get around out on the water. But the wheels stay the same. Everything stays exactly as we see it here right now. Hey, wheelman. Yeah, we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that. My buddy up here, what's your name, kid? Lincoln. Lincoln from Texas. Yeah. He asked if we're going in the water like they did in the old days. These duck boats were actually designed in 1942, produced in 1942 by General Motors Corporation for our military. This is a replica duck boat. The duck boat you're on is called Tub of the Hub because we're really clever here. And we give our duck boats cute names. And that one behind us, Copley Squire instead of Copley Square. Tub of the Hub instead of Top of the Hub. Have you heard of the Top of the Hub? The restaurant at the top of the Prudential Center. See you, Jasmine. It's a great observation point here in Boston, actually. That's on Boston's Back Bay. When I think of Boston and bringing in a guest to show them around Boston, I'm thinking primarily of three sections, and we're going to go through these sections today. One would be down here, of course, the waterfront. This is probably where I'd start, so I congratulate you on your choice of location. I'm not kidding, because there's a bunch of activity here always, no matter what day of the week it is. And you're right on the water. That's not just because I'm a pirate, it's because I like being on the water. Plus, just ahead of us, a little bit over to our right, an area known as Faneuil Hall, that includes Quincy Market, Blackstone Corner, Haymarket Square, into the hub, because it's kind of the center of the Back Bay. Back Bay of Boston is Boston's largest landfill project. You're going to find out, and I'm probably going to tell you more than once, that most of downtown Boston is man-made. I did mention a moment ago that it started off as a tiny peninsula. Yep. Over the years, we've added about 5.5 square miles of landfill to the Shawmut Peninsula. So, of the 7 square miles that Boston is today, most all of it's landfill. Another very interesting section of Boston is just beyond the North End, or north of the North End. That's called Charlestown. Charlestown is an annexed community of Boston, so technically it's Boston. It's rich with history. A lot of things to see and do over there in Charlestown. Especially if you like Navy boats. You like Navy boats, Lincoln? Yeah, there's one over there you can take a free tour of. There's 2 over there you can take a free tour of. One is the oldest commissioned naval warship afloat in the world. That's the USS Constitution. She's still on active duty in the military. Currently in dry dock, you can still take a look around her upper decks. The other vessel is in the water. Her name's the USS Case and Young. She's a Fletcher-class World War II destroyer, much more modern than the Constitution. And she's wide open. Take a look all around her. And both those tours are free of charge, you know. There's many things to see in Boston, many places to visit Boston that are free of charge. Earlier today they were working on this intersection. They literally had a truck that was a vacuum cleaner. Like a huge tank truck with a big hose, and they were sucking up the debris out of that hole that they dug there this morning. You wouldn't be able to hear anything, actually, as we were driving by it earlier. 70 at night. Eventually, some British troops fired into the crowd. They killed 5 Boston citizens. It truly was a tragic event. Whether it was a massacre or not, that's open to debate. One man, Samuel Adams, he was ready for the revolution right then and there. But his cousin, John Adams, was not. This is the same John Adams that goes on to be our first vice president, second president. He is an attorney in Boston in 1760, more precisely a barrister, because we're still under British rule. He defends the British troops that are involved in the Boston massacre. These men are charged with murder, and if they're convicted, they're going to hang. Well, they're all acquitted of the charges of murder. 2 are found guilty of manslaughter. They didn't hang these men, they branded them with the letter M on their hands. Sounds barbaric, doesn't it? But it's better than hanging, I would think. Yeah. We just passed by the education building. I'm sorry I didn't show it to you. Greystone building. It's not important. The site is. It was the site of the Boston City Jail. The famous pirate Captain Kidd was held at the Boston City Jail. Did you know there was a real Captain Kidd? Yeah. He actually turned himself in here to the royal governor of Massachusetts because he expected to be pardoned for all of his activity. He was what's known as a privateer. The difference between a privateer and a pirate is pirates all for him and his buddies, right? A privateer is for him, his buddies, and his sovereign, like his king or his governor. They gave him permission with a letter that said he could attack enemy vessels. Well, Captain Kidd made the mistake of attacking an Indian merchant vessel, not the French vessel that he thought it was. So to save face, this is the King's Chapel Burial Ground. We call it the King's Chapel Burial Ground because it's adjacent to the King's Chapel, that beautiful Greystone building there. This is the oldest graveyard we have. Many of the original Puritan settlers are buried there. Also to our left, we have the Omni Parker House. This is the oldest continuously operated hotel in the United States of America. Home of the Boston cream pie and the famous Parker House roll. Both Ho Chi Minh and Malcolm X worked right there at that hotel. Isn't that crazy? But it's true. The graveyard coming up on our right, another old one. This one's called the Granary Burial Ground, also known as the All-Star Burial Ground. We call it that because a lot of famous people are buried there, including 3 signers of the Declaration of Independence. The only place in the whole world where there's 3 signers of the Declaration of Independence buried in the same graveyard, right here at the Granary Burial Ground in Boston. John Hancock, that's his gravesite, closest to the red brick buildings, that big monument. He's one of the men that signed this Declaration of Independence. Yep, Sam Adams also signed it. Robert Treat Paine, they're all buried right there. Might have noticed the big monument in the center. You can still see the monument, but you can't read the name, I don't think, unless you got like Superman eyes. It says Franklin on it. Who do you think's buried there? Not Ben Franklin, but his parents and other family members, actually. They stayed in Boston. He ran away from home. He went to where? Philadelphia. Ben Franklin was born in Boston in 1706. I like to remind people of that. Even a lot of Bostonians think Ben Franklin was born in Philly, but he wasn't. He was born on the same street we met on, Milton Street, just a few blocks west. Puritan settlers that came here in 1630. So here's the situation back in the early 1600s. 1625, the first English settler comes in here. His name is Reverend William Blackstone. He lives on a section of the Common for 5 years, essentially as a hermit. Well, that small stucco-sided building to our right is the Visitor Center on the Common, the official starting point of the Freedom Trail. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. So Blackstone lives essentially as a hermit on the Shuman Peninsula, primarily in this area that we now call the Common. He's visited seasonally by the Native Americans that continue to use the Shuman Peninsula as a seasonal fishing ground. He seems to get along with them just fine. He doesn't mind living alone, but everything changes in 1630. That's when a group of Puritan settlers arrive here in the Shuman Peninsula. You heard of them, haven't you? Tough group of people. They admire the Shuman Peninsula and they purchase it from the good Reverend. They changed the name to Boston because they came here from. Anybody have any guesses? Boston, England would be a good guess because that's where they came from. Notice how we do have a lack of creativity when it comes to naming things. Maybe it started with them.